Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Sunday, January 18th, 2026.
And today we are tackling a figure who, quite frankly, shouldn't make any sense at all.
He really shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to feed the data of this man's career into a computer,
Right.
inputting every single genre shift, every business decision, every bridge he's ever burned, the algorithm would probably just crash.
It would absolutely crash. It wouldn't know how to categorize him. Usually, the algorithm for a rock star is pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a straight line.
It's rise, peak, decline, nostalgia tour. This particular data set does not follow that line at all.
Not even close. We are talking about a man who is 80 years old. Well, he turned 80 back in November. And he's been active in the music industry since 1963.
Over 60 years. It's staggering.
It really is. And he's the man who wrote arguably the most tender acoustic soft rock ballad in history, Heart of Gold. And yet, if you ask a kid in a garage band right now who he is, they'll call him the Godfather of Grunge.
Yeah, they know him as the guy who plays the loudest, ugliest, most distorted guitar you can possibly imagine. It's the central contradiction of rock and roll, all embodied in one person.
One Canadian, of course. We are talking about Neil Young.
The man, the myth. The guy who just refuses to do what anyone tells him to.
Exactly. And our mission today is a little bit different. We're not just going to list his albums chronologically.
We'd be here until 2030 if we did that.
We really would. We have a massive stack of sources here. Biographies, liner notes, interview transcripts, even some technical patents, and reports on his very recent activity from late 2025.
Right. And the goal isn't just a discography review. It's to try and unpack his philosophy. I kind of call it the philosophy of self-renewal.
Self-renewal, I like that.
I mean, how does an artist survive for over 60 years?
Yep.
Usually they do it by playing the hits, by staying safe. Neil Young survived by constantly, and I mean constantly, destroying the very things that made him popular in the first place.
It's like the scorched earth policy of career management.
It really is.
So, okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the beginning to really understand why he is the way he is. And I think a lot of people don't realize just how much his childhood physical struggles actually defined his sound.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You just can't understand the way Neil Young plays guitar, that specific stomping, aggressive style, without understanding what happened to him back in 1951.
He was born in Toronto in 1945, moved around a lot, Ome, Pickering, eventually landing in Winnipeg.
Right.
But in 51, he contracts polio.
And this was during the last major polio outbreak in Ontario. It wasn't a mild case either, where he just felt sick for a week. He was actually partially paralyzed.
On his left side.
On his left side. And if you think about what that means for a guitar player...
That's your fretting hand.
That's everything. That's where all the dexterity is supposed to live.
Right, all the fine motor control.
Exactly. And if you watch him play, even now at 80, he has this unique, almost lumbering physical style. He sort of stalks the stage.
He does.
And when he plays the fretboard, it's not this precise, shredding dexterity you see with someone like an Eddie Van Halen or a technical virtuoso.
No, it's clunky.
It's clunky, it's forceful, it's visceral. That lack of fine motor dexterity on his left side forced him to develop a style that relied on raw power, on rhythm, on emotion, rather than any kind of technical perfection.
It's that stomp he does. He looks like he's trying to murder the floorboards while he plays. He leans his entire body into a chord.
Because his hand alone can't do that delicate work. That's the polio legacy. It forced him to be expressive rather than technical, and in doing so, he turned a physical limitation into his signature sound.
So after the illness and all the moving around, he lands in Winnipeg, which he really considers his hometown.
His hometown, yeah.
He starts a band called The Squires. They have a local hit, a song called The Sultan. But here's a detail I found fascinating in the notes. He works with a local producer named Ray D.
Right, and this is so significant. He refers to Ray D as the original Briggs.
Which is such a deep-cut piece of foreshadowing, isn't it?
It's incredible. David Briggs, who we'll talk about later, became his lifelong producer. He was the guy who pushed him to be raw and imperfect.
Right, to capture the mistakes.
Exactly. And it's so interesting that even as a teenager in Winnipeg, Neil was already looking for that specific dynamic. Someone who understood the sound in his head and, crucially, didn't want to polish it too much.
He always needed a foil, it seems. Someone to
Yeah.
capture the lightning, not just, polish the furniture.
That's a great way to put it. He knew early on that his strength was in the feel, not in the perfection.
But here is where the story gets really, really interesting. This is the part of the story that always blows people's minds. It's the great what-if moment of the century.
Oh, for sure.
It's 1966, Toronto. Neil Young joins a band called the Mina Birds.
This is one of the great lost chapters of rock history. I mean, if you pitched this story to a movie studio, they'd tell you it was too unrealistic.
They really would. Because who is the lead singer of the Mina Birds?
None other than Rick James.
Rick Super Freak James.
Yeah, before the funk, before the braids, before I'm Rick James, you know? It was Neil Young on a 12-string guitar and a young Rick James singing R&B.
And the wildest part is, they were apparently really good.
They were. They were so good, in fact, that they got signed to Motown.
To Motown? That's unbelievable.
It is. They had a deal. They were recording in Detroit. I mean, just imagine for a second a universe where Neil Young becomes a Motown session player or a funk guitarist.
It was happening. They were in the studio.
They were. And then the collapse. And it's just a spectacular collapse.
What happened?
Well, Rick James had, unbeknownst to the rest of the band, gone AWOL from the Navy Reserve.
Oh, no.
He gets arrested, the band implodes instantly, the Motown deal is dead, the recordings are vaulted and just disappear for decades.
Talk about a pivot point in history. If Rick James just serves his time or doesn't join the Navy, Neil Young might have spent the entire 60s wearing a matching suit and doing choreography.
Who knows? But instead, he's stranded. The band is done, so what does he do?
He does what any broke musician would do.
He and the bass player, Bruce Palmer, sell the band's equipment.
Which I think I read technically wasn't theirs to sell, right?
Well, you know, details.
Right. They sell the gear, and what do they buy?
They buy a hearse.
A 1948 Pontiac hearse. They named it Mort.
Mort, of course they did. It's perfect.
I just love the visual of this. Two long-haired Canadians illegally in the U.S. Because you have to remember, Neil didn't get a green card until 1970.
Right.
Driving a hearse from Toronto all the way to Los Angeles.
It's the ultimate counterculture road trip. They drive across the continent. They have no real plan, just this vague idea that their friend Stephen Stills is somewhere in Los Angeles.
They get to L.A., and the story goes they couldn't find him. They were broke, they were discouraged, and they were actually on their way out of town.
Yeah, heading up to San Francisco, I think.
Exactly. And they're stuck in traffic on Sunset Boulevard.
Just a total gridlock. A sea of cars. And in the other lane...
In the other lane, they see Stephen Stills and Richie Furay.
It's unbelievable.
Now, Neil and Stephen had met briefly in Canada, but the chances of just running into them in L.A. traffic?
Astronomically low. Stills recognizes the hearse. I mean,
Right.
Who else drives a 1948 hearse with Ontario plates?
Right.
He waves them down. And right there, on the side of the road in a traffic jam, Buffalo Springfield is born.
That is just... It feels like fate. It feels written.
It really does. Which brings us to, the first major phase of his fame. Buffalo Springfield was huge, but they burned hot and fast.
For what it's worth, becomes this massive anthem for a generation.
But the volatility was there from day one. You had Stills and Young, two alpha males, just constantly fighting for control.
Stills had that famous line, didn't he? He accused Neil of wanting to play folk music in a rock band.
Yeah, and it was meant as an insult, but honestly, it's the most perfect description of Neil Young's entire career.
It really is.
He takes the storytelling and the acoustic sensibilities of folk, but he delivers it with the volume and the aggression of rock. Stills identified the formula before anyone else even knew what it was.
So inevitably, Buffalo Springfield implodes. Neil goes solo, releases a debut that's, okay, but not great.
A little overproduced.
Yeah. Then he hooks up with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. He joins CSNY.
And this is where we really see his reactive nature start to shine. We can't gloss over the song Ohio.
May 4th, 1970, the Kent State Massacre.
Neil sees the photos in Life magazine, and he doesn't sit on it. He doesn't workshop it for 6 months.
No.
He walks into the woods, writes Ohio basically on the spot, and they record it almost immediately. It's on the radio within weeks. It just demonstrates that for Young, music is a news broadcast. It's immediate. It's a reaction to the now.
But then comes 1972, the album that just changed everything, Harvest.
This is the absolute peak. He goes to Nashville. He recruits this group of session players he calls the Stray Gators.
And he records Heart of Gold.
His only #1 hit.
That's crazy to think about.
It is. With all the songs we know, Rockin' in the Free World, Old Man, Cinnamon Girl, Heart of Gold is the only one that ever hit the top of the chart.
And the album itself was the best-selling album of 1972 in the entire United States.
He is, for that moment, arguably the biggest rock star in the world. He has the money, the fame, the ranch in California. And what does he do?
He freaks out.
He completely freaks out. He runs for the hills. Or, more accurately, he runs for the ditch.
This is that famous quote, right, where I have it here from the liner notes of the Decade compilation.
Yeah.
He writes, Heart of Gold put me in the middle of the road. Traveling there soon became a bore, so I headed for the ditch.
A rougher ride, but I saw more interesting people there. That is his mission statement. But we have to be clear, it wasn't just artistic boredom. There was real darkness there.
No, it was tragedy. Real-life tragedy.
While Harvest is topping the charts, his inner circle is literally dying. Danny Whitten, the guitarist for Crazy Horse.
The guy who helped him build that heavy electric sound.
That very guy. He dies of a heroin overdose. Then Bruce Berry, a roadie, also dies of an overdose.
And Neil feels responsible, doesn't he? Particularly for Whitten.
Immensely responsible. He had just fired Whitten from the band because he was too strung out to play. He gave him $50 and a plane ticket back to L.A., and Whitten died that very night.
Yeah, that guilt must have been crushing. So it's not just, oh, I want to be more artistically credible. It's, my success is killing my friends.
Exactly. And that guilt and that grief produced what fans now call the Ditch Trilogy.
Time fades away on the beach, and tonight's the night.
And Tonight's the Night is a harrowing listen.
It really is.
It's recorded in this grief-stricken haze. The story goes, they were just drinking tequila, staying up all night, singing out of tune, voices cracking. It sounds less like an album and more like a wake.
And the record label heard it and said, what? No way.
They said, we can't release this. This is professional suicide. You're the Heart of Gold guy.
But he forced them to.
He did. And today, critics look back on those albums as absolute masterpieces.
Because they're so authentic?
They're authentic. He sacrificed all of his commercial viability for emotional truth. That is the literal definition of the ditch. He proved that the imperfection was the art.
So if the 70s were about running away from fame, the 80s were, well, what even were the 80s? Because this is where a lot of people usually get confused.
The 80s were about experimentation, confusing everyone, and technology. And it all starts with Trans in 1982.
The Robot Voice album.
The Robot Voice album, yes. He signs a new deal with Geffen Records, a new era. And the first thing he hands them is an album where his voice is run through a vocoder.
It sounds like, what, Kraftwerk?
It sounds like electronic German pop music. Everyone thought he'd completely lost his mind.
Well, there was a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just him deciding, let's be weird today.
No, and this is the really heartbreaking part of the story that wasn't widely known at the time. Neil has two sons with cerebral palsy, Zeke and Ben.
Right.
And his son Ben was nonverbal. So Neil was spending hours and hours a day with Ben, trying to find ways to communicate with him, using assistive technology, buttons, switches.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And he had this realization that through technology, a voice could be given to someone who didn't have one. Trans was an artistic expression of that communication barrier. He was singing through a machine to try and understand his son's experience. He was filtering his soul through a computer to bridge that gap.
That completely recontextualizes that album. It goes from being a weird 80s mistake to this deeply personal father's love letter.
It absolutely does. But David Geffen, the head of the label, he did not see it that way.
No, I bet Geffen did not.
Neil then follows up the electronic trance with a 25-minute rockabilly album.
Everybody's rocking.
Recorded with a band called the Shocking Pinks. It's just complete musical whiplash.
And what does Geffen do?
Geffen sues him.
He sues him. On what grounds?
The label literally sued Neil Young for making music that was, and this is the quote, unrepresentative of Neil Young.
That is hilarious. You don't sound enough like yourself, so we're taking you to court.
It's the only time I can think of in music history where an artist was sued for not being their own brand.
And what was Neil's response?
Classic Neil. He said, the 80s were artistically very strong for me because I knew no boundaries. He just refused to be a jukebox. He insisted on being an artist, even if it meant getting sued for $3 million.
Incredible. And then eventually the wheel turns. We get to 1989. The 90s are approaching.
Right.
And suddenly the guy who was making robot noises in rockabilly he's cool again.
He is very cool again. The Godfather of Grunge era begins. He releases the album Freedom in 1989, and it has Rockin' in the Free World.
Which, by the way, is a savage critique of the George H.W. Bush administration, even though politicians keep trying to use it as this patriotic anthem.
They never listen to the verses, do they? People shuffling their feet, people sleeping in their shoes, got 1,000 points of light for the homeless man. It's a song about homelessness and poverty.
Right. But sonically, he's back to using that heavy feedback and distortion. And who is listening to that in the late 80s?
A bunch of kids up in Seattle?
Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden.
All of them. They all worshipped him. He was the one boomer rocker who didn't seem like a sellout. He wore flannel, he played loud, he didn't care about hairspray or spandex. He was their prototype.
But that connection to grunge has a really tragic edge to it, specifically with Kurt Cobain.
It does, a very tragic one. In 1994, when Kurt Cobain took his own life, he quoted Neil Young in his suicide note.
It's better to burn out than to fade away.
From my, hey, hey, and it just devastated Neil.
I can't even imagine.
He had actually been trying to contact Cobain in the days leading up to his death. He said he sensed Kurt was in trouble. He recognized the signs of fame crushing a sensitive soul. He had been there himself in '72.
Right.
He wanted to tell him, you don't have to burn out. You can fade away for a bit. You can go to the ditch for a while and come back. But he never got the chance.
That's so heavy. To have your own lyrics, your own philosophy, used as a justification for that.
It led to the album Sleeps with Angels, which is dedicated to Kurt. And then, in this amazing move of solidarity, he basically adopts Pearl Jam.
He records Mirrorball with them in 1995.
Yeah, as his backing band, which is a killer album.
Downtown is a great track.
It is. And then Eddie Vedder inducts him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that same year. It just cemented his relevance for a whole new generation. He wasn't some oldies act, he was a peer.
Okay, so we've talked about the music, but we have to talk about the sound itself.
Yeah.
Because Neil Young is a gearhead of the highest order.
Oh, he is obsessive, a complete mad scientist when it comes to tone.
So let's talk about Old Black.
The Excalibur of Grunge. It's a 1953 Gibson Les Paul Gold Top, but it's been painted black over the years.
And modified to hell and back.
Completely Frankenstein. It has a Bigsby vibrato tailpiece, which is part of why it always sounds like it's just about to go out of tune in that specific Neil Young way.
But the secret weapon is the pickup, right?
The pickup is the secret weapon. He put a Firebird pickup in the bridge position that is highly, highly microphonic.
Okay, so what does microphonic mean for someone listening? How does that change the sound?
A normal guitar pickup just senses the string vibrating above it. A microphonic pickup acts like a literal microphone. It picks up the sound in the room, it picks up the drums, the amps, the crowd noise.
So it's literally hearing the room.
Exactly. And that's why his feedback sounds like it's alive. The guitar is hearing the amp is amplifying the guitar, and it creates this chaotic, controllable loop. He can literally talk into the guitar pickup and you'd hear it through the amp. He's playing the air in the room, not just the strings on the guitar.
And then there's the whizzer. I love the whizzer.
The whizzer is pure proof of his insanity in the best possible way.
So explain what it is.
Okay, so he uses these vintage Fender Deluxe amps. But he wanted to change the volume and tone settings in the middle of a song without walking back to the amp.
Right, but he didn't want to use a modern digital pedal board because that messes with the signal path.
Exactly. He's a purist, so he built a robot.
He built a robot.
Basically. The whizzer is a mechanical device that sits on top of his amp. It has actual motors and gears that physically grab the knobs on the amp and turn them to preset positions when he stomps on a foot switch on stage.
That is just the dedication. He would rather build a mechanical contraption to physically turn a knob than use a digital chip.
It's all about the purity of the signal, which connects directly to his other obsession, model trains.
And he wasn't just a casual hobbyist, right? He owned part of the company.
Part of Lionel, LLC, the biggest model train company. And he is named as a co-inventor on 7 U.S. patents for model train controls.
And again, this links back to his son, Ben.
It does. How so? Standard model train controllers require really fine motor skills. You have to turn these tiny dials.
Which Ben couldn't do.
Right. So Neil invented all these new systems with big buttons and different interfaces so that his son could control the trains. It's the same story as the album Trance. He's using technology to connect with his family.
It always comes back to family and communication for him.
And that obsession with quality led to Pono. Do you remember Pono?
The Toblerone-shaped music player.
The Toblerone music player. People mocked the shape, but his analogy for it was perfect. He said listening to MP3s was like taking a shower in tiny ice cubes, whereas analog or high-res sound was like water.
He wanted to save audio quality.
Yeah. The venture failed commercially, the hardware was discontinued, but the point stands. He cares about the details more than almost anyone.
Okay, let's jump to the recent years. Because usually when an artist hits 75 or 80, they go on the greatest hits tour, and they play casinos. Neil Young does not do that.
No. The period from 2020 to right now, 2026, has been incredibly active and very politically charged.
No, we have to mention the Spotify saga.
Of course. January 2022, he pulls his entire catalog from Spotify.
Why?
Because of the Joe Rogan podcast spreading what he saw as COVID misinformation. He drew a line in the sand.
They can have Rogan or Young. not both.
It was a huge move. He lost a lot of streaming revenue. He had sold half his song rights just before that, which probably gave him a cushion, but he still walked away from millions of dollars.
But then, in March 2024, he went back on the platform,
He did.
which some people called a flip-flop.
He called it pragmatism. Rogan's exclusivity deal with Spotify ended, so the podcast was suddenly everywhere. Apple, Amazon, you name it. And Neil realized he couldn't boycott the entire internet. But he had made his point.
But he didn't stop boycotting. Fast forward to October 8th, 2025. That was just a few months ago.
The Amazon boycott.
Right. He pulled his catalog from Amazon Music.
This time, he was targeting Jeff Bezos directly. Young accused him of supporting a U.S. government that he felt was neglecting public welfare. He urged his fans to support local businesses instead. It just shows that even at 79, turning 80, he's still looking for the man to fight.
He's always fighting corporate power.
Always.
And speaking of fighting power, we have to talk about his new song, Big Crime.
The one that premiered in Chicago back in August 2025.
I remember reading the reports on this. He's on stage, almost 80 years old, and he just drops this brand new, heavy protest song.
And the lyrics are so blunt. Big crime in D.C. He's targeting the political climate, the deployment of soldiers on American streets. It's a protest song in the direct vein of Ohio, but for the 2025 political landscape.
It proves he hasn't lost that reactive songwriting impulse. He's still a musical news reporter.
And he's doing all this as a U.S. citizen now.
That's right. He finally got his citizenship in 2020.
Yeah, it was delayed because he admitted to using marijuana during the application process.
Of course he did. Honest to a fault.
But now he's a Canarican, as he calls himself, and he seems to take his role as a citizen very, very seriously.
So that brings us right up to today, 2026. The Love Earth tour with Crazy Horse in 2024 got cut short because of illness in the band.
Right.
And I think a lot of people thought, okay, is this it? Is he finally retiring?
And the answer, predictably, was a loud no. He just went out and found a new band.
The Chrome Hearts.
Formed in late 2024. It's Micah Nelson, that's Willie Nelson's son on guitar, the legendary Muscle Shoals organist Spooner Oldham, and the rhythm section from his other band, Promise of the Real.
And what's the sound like?
The producer, John Hanlon, described it as irreverent rock and roll paint splatter.
I love that description so much. It's perfect.
It is. They released an album, Talking to the Trees, in June of 2025, and then they played Glastonbury.
Right, June 2025. He headlines Glastonbury. And in typical Neil fashion, he initially tries to block the BBC from broadcasting his set.
Then he changes his mind at the very last minute. The reviews were fascinating. One of them called the band tumultuous and lumbering.
Which, for a Neil Young, is the highest compliment you can pay.
It absolutely is. If it's too tight, it's not Neil. It has to feel like it's just about to fall apart at any second.
And he also popped up on, what was it, an Al Jardine EP last year?
Yeah, Al Jardine from the Beach Boys. He did a guest spot alongside Flea from the Chili Peppers on trumpet. It's just, he is everywhere. He refuses to stop creating.
So what does this all mean? We have a guy who started in Winnipeg in the early 60s, survived polio, was almost a Motown star.
Became a folk icon, destroyed his career to avoid boredom, invented grunge, built robots to turn his amp knobs.
And is now, at 80 years old, writing protest songs about the 2025 government with a brand new band.
If you look at the pattern from the Ditch to the Chrome Hearts, the one and only constant is movement.
Rust never sleeps.
It's not just a cool album title, it is his operating system. It's his core programming. If he stops moving, he rusts. If he stays in the middle of the road, he gets bored. He has to be in the ditch or on the edge or trying something that might fail. He's terrified of creative stagnation.
It's so interesting to think about that final provocative thought. You know, he's spent 60 years fighting the man, whether it's streaming services, oil companies, record labels, politicians.
And yet he's still here. And I think the question for you, for the listener, is this. Is Neil Young's relevance today defined by the quality of the music he's making in 2026? Or is it defined by the sheer, stubborn persistence of his resistance?
Does the ditch eventually become the main road if you just drive in it long enough?
I think he proved that it does. He didn't come to the mainstream. He dragged the mainstream over to him, kicking and screaming. He forced the world to appreciate the noise.
That is a fantastic way to put it.
And if you want to really understand this range we've been talking about, here's my homework assignment for you. Don't just go listen to the hits.
Okay, what's the assignment?
Go listen to the album Trans with all the vocoders. Listen for the longing in that robot voice. And then immediately after, listen to the album Harvest, specifically the song Old Man.
Back to back.
Back to back, because it's the same guy. It's the exact same soul. And once you can hear the human being inside the robot voice, and you can hear the abrasive edge inside the acoustic song, that's when you'll truly understand Neil Young.
I'm going to go do that right now. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.